what PNR is it's when you make an airline reservation or the Eurostar or whatever, you will provide up to 35 categories of personal data, and this is held on one of several European reservation databases which are shared by all the airlines and major transport carriers in Europe. Now basically in 2003 the European Commission agreed, following a request from the Department of Homeland Security, that law enforcement agencies in the United States could have direct access to these passenger reservation databases. So that means that today, when I flew from London to Heathrow, it's quite possible that the Department of Homeland Security, well, if it so wished, could access that data. Now this is despite the fact that the European Parliament voted, it didn't have a formal role in the proceedings, but it voted 3 times to reject the agreements with the United States. The European Court of Justice actually annulled the first treaty, but nothing's really changed since 2003. We still have a situation whereby US law enforcement agencies have direct access to personal data of millions and millions of Europeans, and that our supposed data protection laws, which are supposed to be, you know, among the best in the world, have simply been abandoned, disregarded. Another related issue really is what then is happening to this data, this PNR data, and lots of other data that's being collected now by border control agencies. And here you're getting into the realm of, you know, risk profiling systems and really the stuff of science fiction. And a lot of it is, again, extremely complex, but you're taking the principle that certain indicators about people can be useful in terms of identifying potential terrorists, etc., etc. But there's a big inbuilt problem with these systems, and that really is that effectively it's impossible to find statistically significant success rates within these programs. You know, if you're talking about profiling millions and millions of people, all you're going to do is subject thousands, tens of thousands of wholly innocent people to what we would argue are inappropriate and unjust checks and interference. What has the European Commission's line been on all this when pressed about why it's effectively abandoned the data protection laws of which it is the custodian? Well, one of the commissioners has said recently that the EU cannot refuse its ally in the war on terror. End of story. My own favourite quote: Osama bin Laden has done more for justice and home affairs and security cooperation than Jean Monnet. Crass but true. You cannot really understate the effect that not only September the 11th, but the Madrid bombings and the London bombings have had on decision making. What's basically happened after each of these atrocities is that whatever security measures were on the table and may have been held up because of principled resistance by one or several member states, were simply adopted because suddenly there was this imperative, and if we don't adopt these measures, all our security and counter-terrorism efforts are going to collapse. It's worth noting that the EU framework decisions on terrorism and the European arrest warrant agreed in 2001, these were agreed in just 6 weeks. The 1997 extradition convention, which the European arrest warrant replaced, took 4 years to agree. You know, you're talking about extremely complex measures that, you know, practicing lawyers find it difficult to understand, you know, and they're just being railroaded through the decision-making process. The terrorist list, the EU has also adopted powers to freeze the assets of alleged terrorists and to ban organisations it deems terrorists. These lists have basically grown fairly rapidly since December 2001. The UN now has a list of about 350 individuals and 150 groups. They are now banned or subject to the asset freeze across the EU under EU law. And then the EU has its own list of about 55 groups and 55 individuals. Now, there's a number of problems with these lists. The primary one being is that if you're actually put on this list, there's no real way for you to get off the list. All you can do is request your government to make diplomatic representations to the state that put you on the list in the first place, which is usually the United States, and they turn around and say, sorry, and you're stuck on there.